life will do what she must do to comfort you and calm you down and let you rest now. The woman in your life, she can rest so easily.
Hello everybody and welcome to Women's Spaces. My name is Elaine Holtz and I'm your host. And as always, I am so excited about today's show. Why? Because I have a special guest with me by the name of Laura Gonzalez. And Laura is a candidate for the Santa Rosa City Schools Board of Education. And this is going to be her second run. She was elected the first time in 2008, and as far as I'm concerned, she does an absolutely marvelous job. But before we get into the interview, I have a little commentary I'd like to make. You know, I've been listening to the news a lot lately, and one of the things that keeps coming up is this word entitlement. You know, and I'm really confused about that. Entitlement. You know, to me, entitlement means that somehow I think I'm entitled to something, that it's my right to have it, and I don't have to put anything into it. Well, you know, I am 72 years old, as I've announced so many times on my show. I'm also a collector of Social Security. Well, you know, it's interesting about Social Security. Believe it or not, I went to work when I was 14 years old, and that was in 1954. And you know, Social Security was well in place at that time. So that means from the age of 14 until I retired at the age of 65, I paid into Social Security. I also paid into Medicare. And the reason I did that is because I had an agreement, just like all Americans have an agreement, that I would pay into this. And when I reached these older years, that I would be entitled to get some return on my money. And that's exactly what Social Security is. And it's also very interesting about Medicare. I also paid into Medicare. And what I find fascinating is I'm still paying into Medicare. I get a Social Security check every month and they take X amount of dollars towards my Medicare. So I've actually paid for Medicare all my working life, and now in my retirement life, I'm still paying for it. So I think I'm entitled to get what I pay for. I mean, if somebody disagrees with that, I mean, I hope they email me at Elaine, ELAINE, HOLTZ @yahoo.com and tell me why you think I'm not entitled to get this benefit that I paid in since the age of 14. Let's see, 14, 24, 34, 44, 54, 64. That's almost 60 years that I paid into this fund. So I really feel let's put it this way, I feel a resentment when I hear these people saying, oh, they think they're entitled, and or this whole 47%, like all of a sudden we're all a bunch of freeloaders. You know, I have a group of friends, many of them collect Social Security, but I don't consider them freeloaders. Now, another thing that I found is very interesting, I love the Progressive Democrats of America. They always come up with the best slogans, and this to me is one of the best ones I've seen. Health care is a human right. Now let's just think about that. Health care is a human right. Now why would they say that? Because we have a right to be healthy. I mean, we have a right in our culture that we take care of one another. And you know, I always use this example. Can you imagine if there's a pandemic, all of a sudden a disease breaks out, nobody has a doctor, nobody has medical care, and we're all running to the, emergency room? I mean, what are our chances of surviving? We need to have health care. We need to have good quality health care. So let me flash this one more time. Health care is a human right. And I'm a human being. I have a right to be taken care of. I have a right to have health care. It's a lot to think about, and I want my viewers to start thinking. I mean, I can't believe that I'm listening to some of the presidential candidates and they're saying, oh, we're going to take away Obamacare. And Obamacare is not the best care in town, but I'll tell you something. I was at a seminar today, and it's a lot better than not having nothing. And it's a first step. That's how I see it. We're starting to move towards, hopefully, I got my fingers crossed, towards universal health care. I mean, I think we would all benefit from that. Well, anyway, that's a lot to chew on, but you know, that's what Women's Spaces is all about. We all just sit around and think on all these things. And don't forget to vote on November 6th. You know, if you don't vote, your vote doesn't count. You know, and I tell my friends who don't vote, if you don't vote, don't complain to me about how good or bad things are. If you don't vote, your vote does not count. And what I try to do is encourage people, if you're going to stay home and not vote because you're protesting, because you hate the Democrats and you hate the Republicans, it's very important you go to the polls and vote for a third party. At least get your stamp on the ballot. You know, when you stay home, what happens? Nothing. And there's a lot at stake this election. There really is. So I encourage people to vote. And now, without further ado, I'm going to introduce one of our local candidates, Laura Gonzalez. Laura, welcome to Women's Spaces.
Thank you, Elaine. Thanks for having me here. I appreciate it.
Oh, I just appreciate having you. I remember when I first saw you on our local television talking in front of the school board about the Doyle Park School, which we'll get into a little bit as we get into the interview. But before I start the interview, I want to tell people a little bit about you. Laura is actually a middle school teacher. She's actually been working in schools for 20 years, which is just amazing to me that you're so dedicated that you're able to last as long as you are, and you're still teaching school. You also have been a member of several boards, and you've also adopted two beautiful young girls. So rather than me tell the viewing audience everything about you, why don't you let us know a little bit about yourself, anything you feel comfortable in letting us know.
Okay. Well, I'm actually a San Francisco native, born and raised in San Francisco and then also Daly City. My grandparents, however, moved up to Sonoma County in the early 60s when I was a baby, and I've been spending my summers with them ever since, and so I almost feel like I'm a Santa Rosa native, but not quite. They bought a home over in the Doyle Park area, where my mother still lives. And so I would come up here all the time. And so after I graduated from San Francisco State with a BA in liberal studies, I decided to move up here full time, be with my grandmother. She needed, not quite a caretaker, but I didn't trust her to live on her own anymore. So moved up here with her, got my teaching credential at Sonoma State University in '91, and I've been teaching in public schools since then. And before I was a teacher, I was actually a bilingual aide in the Roseland district as well. So it's more than 21 years if you count those years working as an aide. And I've been a teacher, like I said, for over 20 years, and I love Santa Rosa, and this is my home now.
Well, you know, it's just beautiful listening to your story, and we have two things in common. I got my master's degree out of San Francisco State. Loved it.
Yes.
And I also got my bachelor's degree out of Sonoma State. So we really have something in common. Well, you know, when I first got wind of who you were was when I turned on the television and I was watching the Board of Education meeting around this whole Doyle Park issue. And I know, you know, probably most people, they've kind of forgotten about it a little bit. So why don't you bring us up to date? What was that all about? And I know that you were rather outspoken about it, and I thought it took a lot of courage. I saw a lot of quietness on that board, but boy, when you spoke, it really had an impact on me. So why don't you talk a little bit about that before we go into the election?
Well, Doyle Park, as viewers may or may not know, has been experiencing declining enrollment over the last years. Their test scores have been stagnant on the lower side. And so there was a little bit of talk over the years about what to do with Doyle Park. The district tried to start an IB program such as they have at Montgomery High School, but it wasn't working. And so this past winter, the board decided to close Doyle Park School because of chronic low test scores and declining enrollment. And I did not agree with what the district was doing, and I felt it wasn't fair. I'm not against closing schools if it's necessary, but I do believe that there has to be due process and there are steps to follow in order to do that correctly. And I did not believe that the district had done that. And I felt that they were blaming teachers for what was going on and not really looking at what the district had done or not done to support Doyle Park. Doyle Park had 7 principals within 10 years, for instance, and all studies point to poverty schools not doing well with a revolving door of principals. So I did not believe that it was just, and so I was pretty outspoken about that because I felt that the district did a disservice to the students there, to the staff there as well, and to the families. And so I my personality, I could not let that slide, and so I had to say something, and sometimes it was a bit forceful. So,
well, Laura, to me it wasn't forceful. I just want to tell you that I thought it was very outspoken and very, very honest and very concerned about the students, about the teachers, and about the whole process in education. And so if someone wants to think of that as forceful, well, I'm with you, because I would be forceful too. I would want that known, because it's very important that we take care of our children. What is going on now? What's happening at Doyle Park at this point in time?
Well, one of the unfortunate things that the district did was they tied the closing of Doyle Park to the opening of the French American Charter School, a school that the district had agreed to be a dependent charter for the district back in December, which I voted for because I'm very much a proponent of bilingualism. I think it's a good thing. It doesn't matter to me what language. But they tied the two things together, and so what happened was the district, the board voted to close Doyle Park and put the French American Charter School there. There was a lawsuit, a subsequent lawsuit, and because of the lawsuit, we reopened the possibility of Doyle Park students attending Doyle Park for one more year. And so there are a little bit less than 100 Doyle Park students there. It's no longer called Doyle Park, it's now Brook Hill Satellite School, because behind Doyle Park on Vallejo there's another school, Brook Hill. And so that's a satellite now, and it's sharing the campus with the French American Charter School. And the idea is that this will be the last year for those students there, the original Doyle Park students, and then next year they will go on to whatever other neighborhood schools they live closest to or are available. So right now the two schools are sharing a campus.
Well, it's really interesting. One of the things that really concerns me is that somehow our public school system is fading away. And one of the beauties of having public schools is it brings some equality. And it's amazing how, instead of looking how they can improve the situation, and maybe cut down on some of these testing and some of this other stuff that they keep throwing into the equation, that they would start looking at how to make our public system even better. Because it's worked. I mean, even though it's not perfect, it's worked because the majority of our citizens have been able to get educated. And when it comes to money, we know oftentimes some people in some areas, that's why I'm personally in favor of district elections. I feel that each district should be represented, and this way they have a say with their school along with the school board. Well, I want to personally thank you for the wonderful work that you did and the wonderful statements that you made, on behalf of our children and on behalf, above all, of our teachers. Oh my goodness. I just get so frustrated when I hear that negativity towards them.
Yes.
Well, anyway, let's get in a little bit into the election aspect of it. You're running for your second term and all that. What inspires you? What is the motivator behind Laura Gonzalez? What motivates you?
Well, in terms of the election, I have a commitment and a passion about public education. I think, as you said, it's very important. I sincerely believe that public education is one of the cornerstones of our democracy. It is a great equalizer. And while certainly there are issues with public education, as with any other institution, that doesn't mean that we need to throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak. There's ways to make it better, but people don't listen to teachers usually. Usually it's powers from up high who've never really spent much time in a classroom telling us how to make the classroom better. So I have a commitment to public education, and in our city in particular, I have a commitment to making sure that because of our changing demographics, I really want to make sure that our Latino children are getting the best that they can and that they're not being overlooked in the scrutiny of public education.
When you talk about public schools being a great equalizer, is that what you're talking about? That, in other words, all groups, all neighborhoods have it's equality. You don't take, I remember in Los Angeles, everybody wanted to go to schools in Beverly Hills rather than East LA. Why? Because Beverly Hills was a very wealthy area and they got more money. East LA was a poor Hispanic and immigrant Jews, and they got less funding. So is that what you're talking about the equalizer?
Exactly, because we have children come to schools with many different backgrounds, with many different experiences, and by backgrounds I don't mean just ethnicity, but socioeconomic status, but they all come together in one area, one time and place where everybody is equal and where they're learning the same thing, and they learn about our country and how to be good citizens. And so I do believe that that in it is what equalization is about. And so that's why I'm very much a supporter of public education.
You know, it's really interesting because I was talking to a friend of mine and they asked me what my politics are. They said, well, are you a Democrat or a Republican? I says, I'm a humanist. Well, what's a humanist? Does that mean you're an independent? I believe in rights for all human beings, and especially the children, and that's what you're talking about. You're talking about bringing equal opportunity to everybody, and everybody has a diverse background. By the way, when I was getting my master's degree out of San Francisco State, I did my internship over at Rohnert Park Junior High School, and I saw the difference. I mean, there were some kids that had the best clothes, they had breakfast in the morning. Other kids came in, they didn't even have food in their cupboards. I mean, it was an amazing eye-opener for me, and I think people need to be more aware of that. Well, tell us a little bit, why should we vote for you? I mean, what makes you different from any other candidate? Here you are, your second term. I mean, why do you feel that it's important that you continue on the school board?
Well, like I said, I have a commitment and a passion to public education. In Santa Rosa City Schools, for instance, we have 16,026 kids. I believe that all of those kids deserve a quality education, and I believe that they need to have advocates for them on the board, which is not to say that other board members don't advocate. But I also come with an experience and a knowledge that I think is not necessarily common among my fellow board members, and that's my education background. I've been a teacher, as I've said, for over 20 years. I've worked with many of these populations. I've worked extensively with Latino children and Latino families. I know the obstacles that they face, and I know also with poverty, children who live in poverty, I know what they're going through, I know what that's like, I know what they're missing when they come to school in terms of background knowledge and so forth. So I have an understanding of what these communities go through. And to be quite honest, I'm not sure that many other board members really do. And which, because they're not working as closely with these populations as I am. So.
Well, that's very important. I mean, when you think about it, it's like, if someone, is going to make bread, say, for example, you don't put him in the kitchen and say, here, make bread, and he's never made it before. And here you are sitting on a school board and having the background of, number one, being a mother. Okay, that's number one. And not only a mother, you adopted two children who had a tragedy in their life and were blessed that they came into your life. So you understand those aspects. You're also a Latino, so you Latina. You also understand the issues with the languages and all the other different things. And above all, you're also a teacher. So you understand the language the teachers are talking. And I think that's very important, I mean, I don't want to seem one-sided. I'm just saying that I believe that these are very important things to bring to the table. Well, here the election comes. What are some of the things that you feel in your next term that you'll be able to do that maybe you hadn't been able to do prior to that?
Well, I have to say the Doyle Park experience has been a big eye-opener for me, and so it's made me want to be a little bit more proactive on different things. And so we are looking at other schools in the district that have declining enrollment, have lower test scores. And so that this doesn't happen again, I want to make sure that we're doing what we need to do as a district to ensure that those schools have success. And look at possibilities of how we might turn the declining enrollment and the low test scores around. So I want to do that. I'm also very interested in career technical education, what in my day and perhaps when you were younger we used to call vocational ed. I've learned a lot since being on the board about that. Hadn't really thought about it because my focus had always been elementary school, middle school, Now I really believe that we need to offer more things to more children. Wanting to go to college and encouraging children to go to college is certainly a good thing, but college is not for everyone, and I think we need to acknowledge that as well. And lots of kids, like my younger brother, for instance, who is very smart, school was not for him, and so he floundered for a while, and he finally found a niche in the Carpenters Union in San Francisco, and now he works for the Escalator and Elevator Union, and he does what he does really well. And when he has overtime, he earns more than I do. So we need to remember that there are many ways to have a good career, a good middle-class career, and college isn't the only way. So I would like to put some more time and effort into career technical education so that, like I said, we can reach more students.
Well, you made a very important point, and I just want to piggyback in that. Like I told you, I have my degree in education, so I have been part of the system. And one of the things that I did notice that not every child should be college bound, because some are not interested, and some, to be honest, don't have the discipline or the desire.
Yes.
Some just like to tinker. And you put them in a mechanic shop or you put them in a wood shop or something like that, and they just excel.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what ends up happening, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that if you just have the expectation we're going to send them to college, that means if you're not, in your heart as a child that maybe that's not for you, it's going to create a sense of inadequacy.
Yes, I agree. I totally agree. And I think that sometimes perhaps we're setting up some of our students when we only focus on college. And not to say that we should stop talking about that, but we have to acknowledge that it's not for everyone. And when we do discuss it, we should discuss it from that point of view. And let's look at what we can do for those students who might go straight into the workforce out of high school.
Well, it's amazing, when it comes to our education system. I'm just going to say it because I think it and I feel it. Our children, not our wars, should be our first priority. I mean, they are the future. I mean, you're talking about the future. So if someone is college bound, you work with them so they can succeed. If they feel they don't want to go to college, maybe they're more mechanical or they want to be. I mean, I've actually seen young people go into these like workshops and all of a sudden discover they want to be an engineer, and they'll talk to the teacher and they'll say, the teacher says, well, you got to go to college, you got to do math, and suddenly that kid is inspired because it's coming from him, not from you telling this is what you're supposed to do, but yet the opportunity is there.
Correct.
So I really appreciate some of the things that you're saying. And Laura, I have to tell you something. Things go by very quickly in this studio, and we're coming to the end of our show. And so what I would like you to do is just look at this camera over here. Anything that you feel is in your heart that you would like to share with our viewers. Don't hold back. Whatever you feel that you'd like to say, just be my guest.
You said 30 seconds?
Oh, you too. Go ahead.
Okay. I just want to reiterate my passion and my commitment to public education. It is a cornerstone of our democracy, and we should be doing all that we can to support public education, not tear it down. Like I said, there's many things we can do to fix it. Let's start talking to teachers, let's start talking to principals, people who are on the front lines who know what's happening in our schools nowadays. And let's listen to them and let's respect their opinions, and let's move forward on that. So I think that's what I'd really like to get across to the audience.
Well, I couldn't have said it any better, Laura Gonzalez, and I want to thank you for being on Women's Spaces, and I want to wish you all the success in the world with this upcoming election.
Thanks, Elaine. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. And to my viewers, wow, that was a lot. Laura Gonzalez, my goodness. I remember when I first heard her, when I don't normally watch television with, the different boards that go on, and all of a sudden, boom, I was on there, and I said, wow, what's going on here? And I thought, what passion, what passion. If we had more teachers that would speak out like that. And one of the things I do want to do is I want to do a shout out for the teachers in Chicago. I mean, people don't recognize, my father was a union man. And he always told me, he says, when the unions go, the country's going to go. And also he said he never met a boss who wanted to give him a raise, or any benefits. And I always thought that was interesting. But the reason I do a shout out for the teachers union in Chicago is because that was a pivotal strike, because they were speaking for our children. They were speaking for better hours, smaller classrooms, more materials, get rid of some of this testing that's just destroying our kids. And I listened to some of the parents, they were angry because they didn't have a child, they didn't have a place to take their child because they had to go to work or other things. And I want to say to all the parents, you must support your teachers. It is so important. Your teachers are with your children more than you are. They are teaching. They are preparing your child for the future. You need to support them in any way that you can. When a teacher says, I need support, you be there. Because what you're really doing is, you're not just supporting them, you're supporting your children. And it's interesting too about this union stuff. The definition, a union serves one purpose. And that is that we can collectively come together and bargain. We can say, this is what we want. We can go to the table with the powers that be, and we can kind of hash it out together. If there's no union, You know what that's going to be? We're going to be 100% top down. And I can't stand that personally. I mean, God forbid they try to do top down with me. And let me tell you something, you're going to hear a lot of noise coming from this woman. Anyway, there's a lot to think about, and I hope you go to the polls and vote November 6th. There is another woman running for the Board of Education. What is her name? The other?
The one who's not an incumbent.
Yeah.
Excuse me, Jenny Close.
Jenny Clow is also running for school board, and she's somebody to look closely at. I'm sorry I didn't have enough time to do both of them, but you know that's the way it is. Time goes by so quickly when you're having fun, I guess. I can't believe on Monday it's going to be October 1st. I'm still trying to figure out where did January to September go. I mean, it's just amazing to me. Anyway, there's a lot to think about. And like I do at the end of every show, I try to encourage particularly my women viewers to get off your duff and do something for peace. Get involved. It is very important. We have a very important measure, Measure Q, for district elections coming up on the ballot. Very important that you pay attention to it. Very important that you vote. And the very least you can do is pick up your pen, go to your computer, type a letter to the editor, send a letter to the President of the United States, your local people, you know, your Congress people, your Senate people, anybody that you choose, and make one simple request. One simple suggestion, and that is before they write that important bill, before they take that important vote, they ask one simple question. Is it good for the children? If it's not good for the children, folks, let's not do it. Because if it's not good for the children, it's not good for the future. And let me tell you something, war is not good for the children. Not having health care is not good for the children. And above all, not having free education. A free education equals a free educated society. And please, please don't forget that. Anyway, this is Elaine Holtz with Women's Spaces saying thank you so much for watching, and I will see you the next time.
A woman in your life who will do what she must do to comfort you and calm you down and let you rest now. The woman in your life, she can rest so easily. She knows everything you do because the woman in your life is you. The woman in your life knows simply what is true. She knows a simple way to touch to make you whole now. The woman in your